By 1944, Japan was suffocating beneath the weight of war. Cities turned to ash, skies ruled by American bombers, and the empire that once conquered half of Asia now trembled under its own silence. But in the laboratories of Tokyo, one idea refused to die. A meteorologist named Hidetoshi Arakawa studied the skies, and there, in the roaring currents above the clouds, he saw salvation. The jet stream, a vast invisible river of air, flowed from Japan straight across the Pacific toward America. And Arakawa believed it could carry more than just air. Japan's factories lay in ruins. Oil was gone, steel was rare. But there was one resource the nation still possessed: paper. Engineers designed something extraordinary, a massive balloon made of handmade washi paper, stitched together by schoolgirls and housewives. Filled with hydrogen, it could soar 30,000 feet high and travel thousands of miles. They called it Fu-Go, the windship weapon, a fragile creation meant to bring fire to the other side of the world. In the freezing dawn of November 1944, soldiers gathered in silence. One by one, the balloons filled, rising like pale ghosts against the horizon. Each balloon carried a payload: small bombs, fuses, and sandbags for balance. Guided only by the wind, they were launched toward the unknown. Some burst in storms, some fell into the sea. But a few crossed the Pacific. Thousands of miles away in the forests of Oregon and the plains of Montana, people would one day look up and see something drifting from the sky. It was small, silent, beautiful, and it carried death. The wind had become a weapon, and America had no idea what was coming. December 1944. The Pacific was silent, but above the clouds, a strange war had begun. From hidden fields in northern Japan, hundreds of paper giants lifted into the air. Some vanished into storms, others into history. But many kept flying, pushed by an invisible current that would carry them across 6,000 miles of ocean, straight toward America. Each balloon was a living machine, a delicate balance of weight, heat, and wind. Barometers sensed altitude. When the balloon sank too low, sandbags dropped. When it rose too high, valves hissed open to release hydrogen. It was mechanical poetry, a mindless traveler built by desperation, sustained by air. Some balloons burned in lightning. Some froze and fell into the sea. But a few kept flying, days, even weeks, toward a continent that never expected an attack. January 1945, a rancher in Montana saw something strange in the sky. A white sphere, shimmering in sunlight, moving silently over the mountains. By the time he reached it, the balloon had burst, its fragments scattered across the snow. Within weeks, reports flooded in, from Alaska to Arizona. Strange fires, explosions. No one knew where they came from. The American government was alarmed, but silent. The press was told to say nothing. Washington feared panic, and worse, information. If Japan learned their weapons were reaching U.S. soil, they'd launch thousands more. So, the military buried the truth. Wreckage was quietly collected, studied, and hidden. Across the Pacific, Japanese commanders waited for news, and, when none came, they believed the project had failed. But on May 5, 1945, near Bly, Oregon, a quiet picnic turned into tragedy. A minister's wife and 5 children discovered a strange white balloon tangled in the trees. As they approached, it exploded. 6 lives gone in an instant. The only known deaths on American soil caused by enemy action in World War II. Even the Japanese never knew their wind weapon had succeeded. By the war's end, Japan had launched over 9,000 balloons. Only a few hundred reached North America, but their message had already crossed the ocean, that even in defeat, the will to fight can ride the wind. After the explosion near Bly, Oregon, silence. No more reports, no more sightings. The sky returned to peace, but something unseen remained. For months, people whispered about the balloons, the paper giants that floated across the ocean and vanished into the trees. In a war that had spanned continents, This small, secret campaign left an invisible scar, a story too strange to fit into the grand narrative of victory. The U.S. Army formed a special task force. Meteorologists, scientists, and intelligence officers ordered to find where the balloons were coming from. Pieces of silk, sand, and even plant seeds were analyzed. The sand was traced to Japan's Honshu coast. The secret was out, but too late. By the time America understood, Japan's factories had already fallen silent under relentless bombing. The Fu-Go program had ended, defeated not by battle, but by the wind itself. Back in Japan, the women and schoolchildren who built the balloons never knew what became of them. They had pasted, glued, and folded in cold winter rooms, believing their work could protect their homeland. Years later, many would say they didn't even know it was a weapon. For them, the Fu-Go wasn't war, it was duty. A silent contribution to a cause already fading. In the decades that followed, pieces of the balloons continued to surface. In Alaska, British Columbia, Montana, even Mexico. Tattered remains discovered by hikers, farmers, and children. Each relic a message from another world, proof that history never truly disappears. It just waits to be found. Even today, a few lie hidden beneath the forest floor. Forgotten messengers still whispering in the wind. The Fu-Go campaign achieved little militarily, but it remains one of the most haunting experiments of World War II. It proved that desperation breeds innovation, that even paper and air could become instruments of war. And as the last of those fragile ghosts disappeared into the clouds, the world below began to change, forever marked by the strange war that fell from the sky. When the Fu-Go campaign ended in 1945, Japan's cities lay in ruins. Its skies belonged to the bombers that once seemed untouchable, but in the ashes of defeat, a new idea survived, that the sky could be weaponized without a single pilot. Across the Pacific, American scientists studied the recovered balloon fragments. They saw not failure, but possibility. In secret laboratories, U.S. engineers began dissecting the Fu-Go's design, its self-regulating altitude system, its timing devices, its windborne endurance. These were primitive drones, paper and hydrogen ancestors of the guided missiles and reconnaissance balloons that would dominate the Cold War. The Fu-Go had failed to burn America's forests, but it had planted an idea that air could deliver destruction silently, cheaply, and from afar. By the late 1940s, weather balloons carried cameras instead of bombs. Radio-guided aircraft replaced paper shells. The lessons of the wind were now driving the next generation of warfare. What began as desperation had evolved into doctrine. Project Mogul, Project Genetrix, all born from the same principles discovered by a Japanese meteorologist who once dreamed of controlling the sky. In the 1950s, the first American drones appeared, radio-controlled aircraft capable of flight without pilots. To the world, they were modern marvels. To history, they were echoes of the Fu-Go. Even the U.S. Navy experimented with balloon-carried sensors, watching Soviet skies the same way Japan had once watched the wind. Every war leaves behind its inventions. And every invention carries a shadow. The Fu-Go was more than paper and hydrogen. It was a vision of invisible war, fought in silence, where machines carried the will of nations through the sky. The wind had taught humanity a dangerous lesson, that the sky itself could become a battlefield. Decades have passed since the Fu-Go balloons vanished into the sky. The world has changed. Nations rebuilt, new wars fought, new skies conquered. But above the Pacific, the same wind still blows, the same currents that once carried dreams, fire, and fear. In Japan, the story of the Fu-Go was buried under the weight of defeat. Few spoke of it. Fewer remembered it. It was an invention born of desperation, and in peacetime desperation had no place. The women who built them returned to their homes. The scientists moved on to other work, and the windships faded from memory. Across the ocean, forest rangers still find fragments, paper pieces tangled in branches, rusted fuses half buried in soil. Each discovery is a whisper from a forgotten war, a message carried by time, not malice, For decades, the US government kept most Fu-Go records sealed. Only in recent years did the story fully emerge, of a war fought silently between clouds. In 2012, a group of Japanese and American students met in Oregon. Together, they planted a tree, not as enemies, not as victors, but as keepers of memory. They stood where one of the last balloons had fallen. The wind that once carried death now moved through branches of peace. Generations apart, yet connected by the same sky. The Fu-Go campaign began as an act of desperation, a final strike from a dying empire. But what remains today is not destruction, but a quiet lesson written in air. That even in war, the wind belongs to no nation. It carries memory, loss, and hope, forever drifting between worlds.